Hello, Adam Lis.
Hi, Genevieve. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Good to have you here. So, Adam, you are working for the Flex Workspace department of JLL, the big
Correct.
real
In
estate
Poland.
broker. In Poland, as we can see from your background,
Yeah.
it's pretty clear.
Yeah, for a reason I got to the office today. Just to
And
have it behind me.
okay, yes. So we have been working and collaborating for the Coworking Europe conference last year, and we know for a bit longer. I've been knowing for a bit longer, and so it was the opportunity maybe to catch up and get some news from Warsaw and Poland, where we
Sure.
were 6 months ago, to figure out how things are going for the co-working industry and the flex workspace industry, and yes, get your feedback about it, as you know, both sides, so the
Yeah, of
operators
course.
and the tenants. So I might just start with how are you doing in Poland? And I saw that for the moment the numbers were lower than some other places in Europe, but
In terms of COVID,
yeah,
yes, they are, but I'm not that expert to know whether they are comparable or not. So it's
yeah,
difficult to say. But I think we're doing good, although the lockdown is actually very difficult for a lot of people. So it's been roughly 5 weeks of lockdown in Poland, and for us, the lockdown is when they close schools, and this is where most of the companies send their employees for remote working from home. And this was just the moment up actually that it all started to be real for us, I guess. And truth be told, it was quite obvious, and I think it applies to most parts of Europe, that for the first wave, most of the co-working operators are trying to keep their head above the water. They're trying not to give any excuses to their tenants or members in terms of providing full scope of the services. And obviously, which is something that is also very understandable, the flexibility of short-term leases or short-term agreements for a lot of companies became the reason why they're fleeing those op centers. And this is something that I think, in a way, is good because it proves the value of flexibility within flex centers. And even though the churn rate will have been quite high during this period, it will also prove that the concept of flexibility in real estate is something very important. And given that predictability in business overall will be lower in in the upcoming months, if not years.
I was saying that it's interesting because what you are saying is here is the idea that this is a perfect demonstration that flexibility is the model, is exactly what companies will need or need already
So
to get rid of the liability.
that's correct. This is the moment when they realize this necessity in terms of running the business in the future, because before the crisis hit, or COVID hit, the economies of the world, everyone understood that flexibility has its value, and that sometimes it's worth paying a little bit more premium on office space just to be capable of expanding, contracting, and changing the business model on the go. And this was something that it had its reasons, and I believe that it was something that was very, very, I don't know, understandable. But on the other hand, no one really understood it because a lot of businesses were really going fine in previous years, and actually flexibility was more considered in terms of expanding, not necessarily in terms of contracting or folding the leases. And in terms of this crisis, I think that it just proves a lot of people what is the value behind it and why they are supposed to pay premium for this flexibility. And now we can only hope that a lot of operators will be able or capable of keeping their heads above the water, and that the margin they had, on the square meter, will allow them to continue the business. But from our perspective right now, we still do not know really what will happen in the office market altogether in Poland. The government hasn't proposed any aids as of yet, at least. So there are some aids and measures towards retail real estate, but in terms of office real estate, there weren't any yet. So a lot of landlords are also waiting for that to happen, or to maybe try to figure out what they can be doing with that, because basically it's in everyone's best interest to keep tenants in the buildings, but everyone knows now that a lot of tenants won't be capable of affording it, and that's that. In the short run, there will be probably difficult choices for both tenants, and it doesn't only apply to flex operators.
To come back on what you were saying, it's interesting because it's like an insurance. Like, why would you take an insurance for against, I don't know, floodings, if you don't think you are exposed to floods because the river is far away and you never can figure out that indeed you could be hit by floods. But all of a sudden you figure out indeed that those big economical crises, and as we said, that it's the third in 10 years or 12 years. So it's become like almost like a pattern. And that's the best, as you were saying, it's the best demonstration that flexibility will become a kind of insurance from the real estate perspective.
Yes, and I think that basically this is something that that will, in the long run, I know I'm just skipping to later, but in the long run, it will give a huge boost to the industry of flexibility. And furthermore, it will allow, especially in the markets such as ours, it will allow operators not to pick up on a price war. So because the price will be justified, will be understood by the market, and that you do not compare square meters of a 7 years lease to square meters within a flex office. So I think it will give quite a boost in terms of educating the market and in terms of market's maturity. And a lot of people from the IT especially are now commenting that COVID has probably boosted digital transformation with a lot of especially larger companies around the world, and this is exactly what will, maybe not exactly, but it will partially apply to what's going on in the real estate, and in understanding the flexibility as a value within their larger companies' real estate portfolios.
Cool. It's like indeed, if we stretch what you are saying to a further step, it's almost like a benediction. This crisis for the flexible industry. Of course, we are laughing. It's terrible time. But on the other hand, it's like a wake up call, and just ripping out the veil which was hiding what was obvious for everyone, that indeed the old model of long-term lease contract and the deposit ID and everything for tenants, big or small, is something that is almost as lot as meaning in today's time, to some extent, isn't it?
Yes, because everyone who runs whatever business it is, they're looking into their businesses from the perspective of now and past, months or years. So they are usually trying to extrapolate it into the future. So they're always hoping that for the best, and risks such as an epidemic, which is something that it hadn't happened, and to this extent at least around the world. So I think that, you know, there will be lessons learned. One thing for sure is that we will, once we will get out of the lockdown, we will be in a different reality. So there's no way we will, you know, get out and it will be at any point in the future, January 2020, because probably we will just have to, you know, get used to different, I don't know, even approach towards hygiene in public places. For flex spaces, what will probably impact them a lot will be probably or possibly new regulations in terms of office density, because people won't be allowed to, you know, sit next to each other in a crowded space, as we know from all the flex operators around the world, because this is where it happens, and which will, by the way, probably cause the price of a desk to surge in the future. So I wouldn't expect that real estate, or at least flexible spaces, will get cheaper for whatever reason in the future, because actually it would be the opposite, especially in markets like Poland, where traditional real estate rents are denominated in euro. And you know, throughout last 2 months or even less, the euro surged by almost 10% in versus our currency. So and all the real estate industry is actually denominated and based on rents in euro. So that said, even if, you know, the prices will be maintained or even a bit lower, then there are a lot of other factors that will probably influence the real price that operators and other tenants and everyone in the market will have to deal with.
And do you see here already some of your tenants or people on your network companies you deal with starting to think like that, to have those kind of thinking process that makes them consider, indeed, hey Adam, find me co-working space now, because this I will stop my lease contract. We need to cover ourselves for those kind of unpredictable circumstances.
So basically, a lot of our clients are right now focused on putting down some fires, you know, connected to their own business. So real estate is, you know, isn't usually the top priority. So probably, you know, this is also a part where we try not to advise them, because this is illegal stuff. This is something that legal attorneys should or counsels should take care of, because usually it will come down to negotiating leases, renegotiating the leases, and considering, you know, all the force majeure applications in lease agreements. But what we see now is actually in the midterm is maybe not yet, but there is a slight spike in interest in terms of flexibility from larger occupiers, which is connected to ongoing construction works. And right now in Warsaw, we have roughly, I don't know, 700,000 or 800,000 square meters of office space under construction. And a lot of these buildings are A-class towers in the city center. And to my understanding, the delivery is actually on time in most of the cases, but then government institutions, fire marshals and so on, they have to actually accept the construction. So they have to confirm that they have to provide the permit. And so it happens. Right now, most of those, you know, government institutions are actually focused on totally different aspects of the crisis, and we expect some delays there, and probably some construction work, some fit outs will be delayed anyway, because you know,
Yeah.
Not all the employees can work, or a lot of them are actually from Ukraine and Poland, and a lot of Ukrainians actually, due to the crisis, got back to their homes. And what I expect in the midterm, that there will be a huge spike in demand for swing space and temporary space for companies that won't be able or capable of extending their current leases, and they won't be ready to, and their target space won't be ready yet. So this is for midterm, I think. And in terms of introducing more flexibility into commercial real estate portfolios of other occupiers, I think it's a matter of the next months, because everything depends on where those companies are right now, whether the real estate is managed from the US, UK, or locally, whether they are in the middle of their current lease, or it will expire next year and in 2 years. So as you know, real estate processes take time. So this is why real estate will probably react with a certain delay. But I think that it's a matter of inception on our part right now to show them that look what's going on, and look those companies that had short-term leases, they could exit, because right now, most of the companies, especially large occupiers, cannot, they do not work from the office space. And a lot of our larger occupiers, occupier clients that have their teams located in flex spaces, are currently haven't been there for 5 or even more weeks, and this is for them, it's lesser a problem than if they were to stay out of there for another, I don't know, a couple of months in a lease that has already commenced.
And because everything we say, we see the perspective, and we see on the longer run all the positive elements that make us believe that indeed the flex industry and co-working space will be thriving, or will be a growingly dominant model in the future. But all that for that we need the current operators to stay alive in the coming weeks. And
that's true.
So we hear about, of course, there is the WeWork story and all the earthquake of all the troubles they went through. But there's some other operators which are, especially in Poland, because a lot of those operators are supported by property companies, property owners.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that? Because that's the big question for the moment. We swing from indeed stories in the media saying, okay, this is the end of co-working, and on the other hand, we hear and more forward-looking statements saying indeed what we just shared as thoughts. How do you see that from your perspective? And okay, do you think that we will have a lot of deaths and the cemetery will be full of co-working operators after this crisis, or so far so good?
I think so. I don't have a crystal ball, of course, but the thing is that I think that the dynamics of co-working development, especially in such markets as Poland, will be more reasonable and slow down a bit. But that said, the business plans for co-working will be revisited after the crisis, and they won't allow any space for price wars, as I mentioned before, or for extra, I don't know, promotions on the deals to attract people, because people will understand, especially now, what the co-working is. And I think the education period will just end up right now, and what we will be looking at are, of course, the biggest operators we expect to survive, that are not tied to any property owners. I think that given the market real estate market overall, in terms of offices at least, will swing a bit towards tenants market finally, will probably give a boost to unconventional models, business models with flex operators such as revenue shares, profit shares, and all the management agreements. And I think that this is a very good thing for the market in the future, because this will bring actually operators and landlords to share the goal. So right now there's a lot, going on around sharing the pain of the crisis between tenants or operators and the landlords. But then I think that if they are in bed together, for the business goal, I think that development of co-working based on management agreements and these kind of models that are asset light for the operators who just focus on doing their job best, and having support of landlords who, on the other hand, which this never changed, who really want co-working operators and flex spaces within their buildings, because these are amenities, these bring additional qualities to or services to their tenants. So this swing is something that I'd expect. Of course, given the number of flex operators owned or partially owned by landlords or investors or investment, like real estate investment companies in Poland, they will be probably safe for now, because they have this cushion of not being kicked out of the buildings. But on the other hand, this will also probably make those landlords more focused on the business model that their co-working brands are working upon or on, and it will probably bring them more I don't know how to even call it, expertise in the flexibility, because basically what we've seen until recently is that traditional landlords, they didn't understand much of co-working, so this is why they always preferred treating flex operators as tenants, because this is something they understood, and understanding the flexibility of hospitality, whatever model, it was something that gave them headache usually. But this thing, at this point, I believe that this is the next step of educating the market from the landlord's perspective and investors' perspective, and in the long run, it will only bring more developed and better, in a way, business models for the whole co-working industry. And of course, there will be some deaths on the way, and those deaths are maybe it won't be fault of some of the operators, but it will just prove that their model wasn't good enough. And I think that unfortunately, most of those deaths will be small operators, boutique operators, that agreed on mostly month-to-month agreements, and they had problems with keeping their head above the water. And of course, large operators such as IWG will have a much bigger bargaining power when they're doing something in a very systematic way around the world. And we know that they have approached already a lot of landlords and are trying to negotiate some of the deals. Same applies to WeWork as it came to press recently. And of course, in every case, there will be a lot of factors, going on, because in case of WeWork, of course, it's not only COVID that caused, them that caused the decision of pursuing. Correct. So they have a lot, different, horizon or perspective of problems behind it. Same applies to small operators sometimes, because the operators that were suffering already before the crisis will be hit harder than those that were successful, and of course the churn rate will rise. But basically, the idea is to just keep it going for as long as possible, or exit as soon as possible. Yeah. Of course, nowadays there's a lot of discussion going on around mergers and acquisitions in the coworking industry, and I don't think it will apply to new markets as Poland is, because like most of the capital that would invest and would take over whatever there is to take over will not come to such markets in such a situation. And of course, I hope there will be some opportunistic investors. There is some, movement from Asian capital. There are some maybe larger operators that will be ready to take over. But for now, I think that everyone is trying to put everything on hold. What we see in the pipeline of even most of the operators, basically in the first quarter of this year, there was one lease agreement signed in Poland from a flex operator in the regional city. It was Newark, but apart from that, basically all the processes that we've been at least witnessing have been put on hold.
How about all those, this discussion we had also had 6 months ago in Warsaw about the need to develop suburban offering. So that's a discussion we see everywhere now, especially now that we see everybody teleworking, that there is this challenge, because in Warsaw, like in most of the biggest city in Europe and elsewhere, there was this huge problem of traffic jam, of commuting time, which is killing people at the end, and and especially the new generation who are looking for in between locations when they can have the best of the both worlds, remote working and not being at home. You see some changes there, or some new thing occurring in Poland?
I think there will be changes thanks to this experiment of the lockdown. And I think that workplace advisory and workplace strategies will evolve in a very, very significant manner very soon, and will be very important, because even a lot depends on what we will see after the lockdowns and what regulations will be introduced. But even given the density in a lot of offices, we will probably see them hitting lower in the upcoming future, and it will stick for longer. So I don't know if it's going to be larger desks, or just desks just 2 in a row instead of 3, but basically I think that it will also have an impact on hot desking, on remote working. A lot of companies that hadn't allowed home working for a long time, especially in consultancy businesses, they will probably try to be more flexible instead of in terms of this model. And at the same time, a lot of companies, but actually everyone who's working from home and has, I don't know, family at home or a dog, they will probably also know that they don't want to work from home from the kitchen table. They want to work from a place where they can actually work, and this is something which will, in my opinion, of course, boost a little bit this revolution of flexibility in the workplace. So probably what I'd say, there will be less desks in the office spaces. There will be probably more social areas, because right now what I think everyone in the lockdown figured out is that the need of people anyway, even if you can do 100% of your work from home or wherever you are, you need to interact with other people. And to be honest, it's something that I could actually refer to our conversation from half a year ago, that traditional office space will move towards co-working spaces in terms of design, in terms of workplace strategy altogether.
Yeah. What about the border countryside and tier 2, tier 3 cities in Poland? That's also, we see this model, for instance, in France. I read that, for instance, 50% of the co-working offering was just in Paris. Same thing in London. Warsaw, we saw as well the numbers were demonstrating in it that there was this domination or this over-representation of the big cities in the co-working industry. Do you also see the demand changing there, or more a leveling of the playing field from a geographical perspective? Or no, it's really too early?
I think it's natural, actually. It's, right now in Warsaw, we have, I think, 69% of the total flexible stock, office stock in Poland. So it got down from 75 from the beginning of last year. So we still see that it starts in larger cities, and then it goes further. But what's important is that it's not because there won't be the need of it. It's again about education. Yeah. It's that tier 3 cities, they do not need flexibility, and office stock is totally nothing. And there are some co-working spaces, usually in large apartments, covered up instead of office space. And it does exist. And of course, we don't see the pipeline of theirs because they're like too small and mostly co-working as opposed to service offices. In terms of further development, I think it will go in the London way, for instance, or in the US, you have Boston area where it actually also started in city centers, but then went into suburbs. Yeah. I don't remember the name, but during the Coworking Europe in November, I met this guy who's running this flex space in Germany, and they were doing only suburban flex spaces, only suburban brand. So I think it's the next step, and for now, I think the current stock in Poland, which rocketed like highly last year and actually last 2 years, also because WeWork came to Poland and helped educating the market, of course, as well. So I think that we will have to first satisfy the current stock and just fill it up, so that people understand how to approach it, and then it will go into regional cities. And right now in our regional markets, we have roughly 100,000 square meters of flex space, which is not located in Warsaw. So basically, it's not that much if you consider that in regional cities right now, major regional cities in Poland, we have roughly 5.5 million square meters of office space. So it's really nothing. Yeah. But I think that it will also go hand in hand with more and more landlords initiatives, landlords who are going to experiment with introducing their own flex spaces into their buildings, and it will be the easiest for them to do it in their own buildings in those tier 2, tier 3 cities.
Yeah, and co-working, as you were mentioning, is not anymore or less seen as a gimmick for the property owners, because we saw dozens of them just starting with their own co-working brand, but more like, okay, as a must-have, just a little piece of jewelry that you need to have, but just something that you put in a corner, and more just taking over bigger part of the business at the end.
And since you and I know both that operating a co-working space isn't actually, it requires expertise. It isn't, I don't want to use an example because it would sound bad, but basically it's not something that's super easy as it seems sometimes to some people. And this is with something that will, in my opinion, or could boost also the idea of hiring operators in your own premises. And this is something that I hope will come true in the upcoming months or years, at least, that the management agreements model will come to the market and will first of all prove good return for landlords, and also will boost a little bit the expertise of co-working operators, that they will just focus on operating and they will just know how to do it, and they will be hired by the landlords to do it.
We hear more and more about the franchising model. Is it something you hear also now in Poland? Or?
To be honest, the franchise model, it's nothing new in the market. Especially, I remember it was many years ago that I think one of the most, at least known brands in the US came, which was called, I think, VentureX. And there were a lot of other like McDonald's style co-working models. I think that it's something that could work, but only if there will be enough proof that if you're hiring a brand, I don't know, even IWG brand, for instance, that they offer franchise model in many markets. If you come with your brand, with that brand to the market, you will have something more than that you would be capable of delivering by your own. And the thing is that right now there is this wrong thinking, in my opinion, that running a co-working space is something quite easy, and what you need to curb is our cost of your lease, then some staffing, and that's it. So that it's running a easy way hostel. But anyone who is in the MICE industry knows that basically all the hospitality and so on, it's a difficult thing, especially if you were to maintain the quality of service, and this is something that a lot will struggle. But I think that right now the franchise model would actually go more into the way that IWG did last year, as a very, very huge master franchise agreement in Japan, when they and I think that not long ago they repeated it in somewhere else in the world, where they sold under a master franchise agreement the whole network of Regis centers in Japan. It was, I think, 120 or 130 centers to a Japanese company, but basically all those locations are still under Regis brand. So Regis still has the I don't know, have them in their portfolio, which was actually the most important part of it. But at the same time, it's asset light for them, because all the lease agreements, all the everything that is heavy in running the business went to the company that actually bought it as a running business. So so basically franchising based on existing centers, existing business, that you can actually look into the books, you can see the P&L, and you understand that, okay, it makes money. I will just scrap some profit to the company, and I will have the brand, I will have the access to the lead generation, I will have the access to all the systems. So this is something that I think will work. So it won't be on the small operators part, but more investors who are just going to take some burden of larger and more mature companies.
Very interesting. Wow. Super insightful as always, Adam.
Thank you. Likewise.
Yes. That could last an additional hour.
Probably.
But always great to hear from you and from the Polish markets, and that we were so enthusiastic about last year, because it was very dynamic, very fresh. And I see that there is a lot of things happening, and to learn also for other European countries and elsewhere in the world. And So yes, do you want to add something? Do you have an additional comment you have, or?
For now, I think no. Let's just hope for the best. Let's hope that the cemetery will be will be empty or as empty as possible, and let's hope that basically out of all the bad things that are going on right now, there will be some good outcomes in terms of our market's development at least, and I mean introducing flexibility into CRE strategies.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Jamie.
Take care.
Likewise. Cheers.